Hi everyone, welcome to our panel about arts and museums and how to make them accessible for everyone. It's the last panel today on arts, the last one in a row of art-related panels and interventions here at the conference. And I'm very happy that this topic takes such an important part in the conference. Because I think that participation in artistic and cultural activities is one of the most fundamental experiences to empower people with disabilities, give them purpose, self-esteem and advocacy, and also to foster the understanding and learning between people with and without disabilities. May I introduce the panel to you? We have 4 different panelists today from organizations that make the arts and culture more accessible, but they come from very different perspectives. We have Marissa from Singapore. Her organization, I go by alphabet, so that's the order how we decided to introduce the people and hear the talks. So Marissa comes from an organization that is called DPA, Disabled People Association. And what she's doing, what they are doing, in her words, is curating information for people with disabilities. I like that term a lot because curating is actually a term that comes from the arts, curating art exhibitions, for example. And what they do is raise awareness, lobbying, education and training. And we will hear from her what kind of guidance and training they do to make the art institutions more accessible. As a second speaker panelist, we have Tere from Boston. Her institution PYD is Partners for Youth with Disabilities, and her focus is on youth, making arts accessible for youth, and especially give youth a purposeful meaning and a purposeful life through the arts by learning and acting in the arts. We have as a third speaker Alexandra from Berlin. She's actually a designer, and her organization is a design studio. It's called Tactile Studio in Berlin. And they do inclusive design for arts and arts institution, and we will hear from her what inclusive design means, something very, very important, something very innovative. And last but not least, Rose from Jerusalem. She's the program director in the museum, the Tower of David Jerusalem Museum. And they do a lot of inclusive programs. They also do networking among museums, and we will hear from her what is necessary to be an open museum for everyone. Martin, maybe you can also add a few words to our panel. And then I can maybe say a few words about myself and then hand on to the panelists. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Doris. Ladies, it's great to be the only man here on board. I feel very comfortable with you. Thank you so much. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy that this topic is now really in this room because I want to tell you that arts enriched my life since the very beginning of my life. I had the luck to be a son of a couple collecting contemporary art My parents have been collecting contemporary art 6 decades now, and designed and created the ESSL collection, which is among the biggest contemporary art collections in Europe. And very recently we did a big donation to an Austrian museum, a well-known museum called Albertina. And part of this donation is presented in Albertina Modern, a subsidiary of the main building of Albertina, but very close to Albertina. Albertina Modern will be the place where we will have a presentation, an inclusive presentation on Saturday at lunchtime for 1 hour, and I'm happy to show also you this marvelous museum. After this amazing development of the Zero project we talked about the days before, and you have seen here in the Zero project conference, it's the 10th conference to be held in the United Nations here in Vienna. It was a very important for me to set some cornerstones on inclusive arts. And this was on one hand a donation of an inclusive artwork in the Austrian Parliament because of the sustainable possibility to present Zero Project Awardees in the Houses of Parliament in Austria. And on the other hand, I asked a graffiti artist from Serbia to do me a favor and design an inclusive artwork called Inclusion, where 2 females are hugging each other. And you have seen it, I'm sure, so far outside next to the reception desk. And it's amazing, it's the very first artwork which is produced in any location of the United Nations during a conference. Isn't that fine? And I'm so happy about this opportunity. And therefore, but if it is done at the Zero Project conference, where it's all about inclusion, of course, this artwork has to be included and have to be here for everyone. If you see or if you don't see, you should have the opportunity to touch and feel also the artwork. And therefore we have included a tactile pattern, and I will take care that I can show it afterwards, this tactile pattern, and it's amazing. But for all of you, you are not with us online, but here in the premises of the United Nations, you have the possibility to see it afterwards. And it is finished, I can tell you, it is already finished, and it will have a very nice place in our shared office in the future, so that whenever you will visit me in the future, you will see this artwork done in the, at a conference, at the Zero Project conference. Well, this was one point. The other was that I'm so upset that almost no person with disabilities are frequently going to museums. And I asked myself, why is it the case? I asked many friends with disabilities why it is the case, and I asked many friends who are museum directors. And on the nutshell, we found out that persons with disability don't know where they are, whether they will find open doors and opportunities and inclusion activities they need for their special needs. And on the other hand, the museums directors are telling us we are investing tons of money, but nobody is coming. This is not a good connection, you know, and therefore I asked Doris, and she's in charge of all arts activities and coordinating them of the Zero project. Doris, thank you so much for your sustainable work that we have designed, and the very first inclusive museums guide for Austria. And I think not just for Austria, but for abroad. And we brought you a gift, and that is this museums guide. Thank you. It's 400 pages. You don't have to read every page, but it's also for you free as an app, so that you can, whenever you come back to Austria, please use the opportunity to go to museums, and you will get information where you are really invited. And I hope that we can change society so that this enrichment I have seen in my own life can be transferred to as many persons with disabilities as possible in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Martin. Here is the guide. As Martin mentioned, I have the honor to be the editor of this guide that we produced together with the ESSL Foundation and ICOM. ICOM is the Austrian Association of Austrian Museums. I have a big box of free books here next to me, so whoever wants one, it's only in German, so that's a little restrictive. But please come up after the panel to me, and I'm happy to give you a copy. Okay, thank you very much. So that's the introduction to our topic, and now to our panelists. Alphabetical order, as I announced. Marissa from Singapore, please give your first presentation.
Hi, so I'm Marissa from DPA. I'm just waiting for the presentation to come up. Great, thank you. So thank you so much, Mr. ESSL, for the preamble, because the situation that you found with the museums in Austria and other places is exactly what's happening in Singapore. So we have this situation where there is a lot happening in Singapore to improve accessibility in the built environment, but that information is not publicly available. And the disability community relies on word of mouth, and really it takes, a few persons with disabilities going out and finding this information and having to spread the word. But of course, if people don't know that something is accessible, they won't go and they won't spread the word. So that's why we've started doing this work. And another thing is, often the disability community do not feel that cultural and arts institutions are friendly to their or their family's needs, and don't want to risk going to new places because they don't know that at least the majority of what that is accessible there at the museums or at the spaces or venues. And also, not having access information on cultural and arts institutions' websites is really a missed opportunity to showcase all the inclusive efforts that are happening at these spaces, at these venues, at these public institutions. And by showcasing them on their websites and in brochures, it's really an opportunity to invite the disability community in, right? So it's a way of saying, come and not only are these places accessible, but we want you to come in. So I'm sure I don't need to belabor the point on what the benefits of the access guides are. I'm sure we all believe in these things in this room, but just to give you an idea of what we're doing, the benefits that we have been telling the arts community and the museum community in Singapore is that the benefits are that we provide access information by persons with disabilities for persons with disabilities, which also benefit older persons and families with younger families using strollers or pushchairs. And we curate and collate relevant information so that persons with disabilities can make informed decisions about their own access needs, so that museums don't have to say, oh, we're accessible, but accessible to who, right? Because the disability community doesn't have the same needs across the board. We also give people an opportunity to showcase the accessible features and the programs and services that are available that may not be permanent ones. And we're encouraging, by asking one or two places to start first, we encourage other places to, to lead by example and then to start offering these access guides. So we started with the National Gallery of Singapore, and in 2019, we started with an audit by access consultants, which resulted in a list of improvements that were internal to the National Gallery. And then we took that information and the relevant information that would be the most impactful and put that into an access guide for persons with disabilities, and then also provided inclusive customer service training for the museum staff. So this is, on the picture on the screen is the front cover of the access guide that we produced for the National Gallery. There's a link here, but you can Google National Gallery of Singapore Accessibility, and you can see the soft copy, the PDF, and there's also all the information on their website that we helped them curate. This led to National Gallery being a great partner and championing us, and then sharing it with other museums in the area. And so the Asian Civilizations Museum asked us to audit their digital programs and some in-person programs during the pandemic. We gave feedback and gave them improvements that they could do and a checklist for future engagements. And you can also see their accessibility services on their website now. So given that we've done that, what are we trying to do next? So we are tackling the Singapore Zoo next, which is another challenge because it's so much different to the layout of a museum. But we're really excited about it because we're going to be adding another feature, which is curating routes around the zoo, routes that are accessible independently, accessible with some assistance, and then routes that are less accessible. We are looking at the Cultural and Historic District in Singapore, which connects some of the museums I mentioned already, but we're looking at the connectivity between the spaces so that people can make day trips to see multiple places and make recommendations for improvements. This is more complicated because there are other stakeholders to get involved. And the other thing is we are applying for a grant, which we're in the process of in Singapore, to train more persons with disabilities to be access assistants, because we really don't have a lot of access consultants in Singapore, so we want to grow that talent base in Singapore to get them accredited to do it. Thank you for allowing me to share. And,
thank you very much, Marissa. Please keep all your questions that you have or comments in mind. We will do a Q&A after the presentations. Also, thank you, Marissa, for keeping in time. You saved us 2 minutes. Tere, next.
Okay. Hello. While the PowerPoint loads, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Tere Ramos. I am a Latin American woman, 52 years old, with dark brown hair, glasses, and a blue suit, and I am the Executive Director of Partners of Youth with Disabilities in the United States, in the city of Boston. We have a unique arts, theater, and music program as part of Partners for Youth with Disabilities. It's called Access to Theater. It is free and inclusive, and it is designed for youth 13 to 24 years of age. And what's special about it is that it's designed for youth with disabilities, but youth without disabilities can come. It's usually the other way around. We've specifically decided that we want to target the youth with the disability. And we provided in the afternoons after school and during the school holiday time in the summer. And what's special about it is that it was actually founded in 1994. To put it in perspective, the Americans with Disabilities Act was created in the United States in 1990. So we were one of the very first inclusive theater programs in the United States. And what we found is that as children with disabilities grow, when they're very young, there tends to be a lot of programming that tends to be inclusive. And as the teens get more independent and they get into their teenage years, they want to assert their independence. They start doing programs as part of high schools. They tend to be more competitive, and youth with disabilities are very often isolated or excluded from these programs. So this program allows this youth to have full access, and the cornerstone of Partners for Youth with Disabilities is mentorship. So we use the base of mentorship as part of the program as well. It's embedded into the program. The mission of the program is, of course, to have fun, but we also look to develop skills, whether it's communication skills, artistic, or leadership skills, and I will give you some of those measures at the end on how we have impacted, or youth have been impacted by the program. We look at changing the content so students don't get bored from program to program, and we look for artists with disabilities to be the mentors and to provide the teaching in the program as well. So as I said, we have found that this program has had a huge impact with the youth that take part. They have a safe space to challenge their potential and take risks. It's built self-confidence, social awareness. It encourages to set their own goals as they decide where they're going to participate in the program, and it enhances their communication, problem solving, skill development, concentration, and memory. So now I have a short video because I could not bring my participants or my staff. In their own words, they're going to tell you about the program. Please roll the tape.
ATT is just a blessing in my life and also everyone's life, because at the end of the day, when you don't have nothing to do, you can just come to the program and just be yourself.
I think what ATT and the PYE programs have taught me is that we are more than what we say we are. We don't really have to fit into this one boxed thing. We can be so many things.
What Access to Theater has constantly given me is joy and just knowledge that what we're doing is what should be done, and giving kids a platform to express themselves in ways most realistically the world will not ever give them.
When they get their voice heard and they feel like they got to pick and they feel like they got a choice and they feel like it's their creativity and they own it, it's just amazing light bulb moments to watch.
It's helped me strengthen my confidence.
This program just allows them to have the choice.
Here, instead of being the minority, they're the majority, and that gives you a major voice.
Bringing people into our lives, into our worlds in a different way to show that, you know, hey, we have something to say, but we're doing it in this format so you can see how creative I am.
What I take away is each of these participants has talent, has a voice, and like I said, has something to say. And if you give them an opportunity to say it, what they have to say can be amazing.
It's a very humanistic performance art. The idea of showing empathy by placing yourself in someone else's shoes, putting that into your body, whether it's an emotion, an occupation, an activity.
ATT has given me a safe space to talk about important issues.
Access to theater, where it can go, is limitless.
Please go to
Thank you. So telling you a little bit, we take data from our participants. We want to know how this program has impacted them. So 100% of our students say that they've learned how to set goals, to be better listeners, to be more independent, and they're better about speaking about their ideas and input. And 97% reported significant improvement in social skills. And over the years, over the 20 or so years that we've run this program, 81% of participants have received a high school diploma versus 73% of all adults with disabilities. 72% attended a post-secondary school or classes compared to 47%. and 42% were employed in 2020 compared to 31% of all adults with disabilities. So what we're looking for in the future is we have just received a very large grant, and we're hoping to double the size of the program. We're going to work on increasing the diversity of participants in terms of racial minorities, demographics, income of the families, and spreading it through our state so there's more participation and more inclusion. And we've also started our first post-COVID virtual session. We had to shift to virtual during COVID. Now we've decided that there's a population of medically need students that really have taken advantage of this, so we're going to continue to move it forward in this pattern. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tere. Alexandra, next, please.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra. I'm 30 years old, I'm a woman, I'm tall and blonde, and I'm the general manager of Tactile Studio in Germany. We are an inclusive design agency based in France and Germany, and we aim to promote access to arts and culture for everyone, which means we design educational solutions enhanced by sensory experiences to make the cultural content in museums, cultural places, and also open spaces accessible for everyone. What we do concretely is to design orientation solutions, because when you go somewhere, the first thing you need to know is where you are and where you want to go and how do you go there. And then in the second step, we design sensitive experiences, so sensory, immersive experiences to make art such as sculpture, paintings, and also content of museums such as scientific content or historical content accessible for everyone. To go more into details, I wanted to show you the diversity of tools we have to make art and culture accessible for everyone. So we do tactile maps and orientation systems with Braille and with the path for blind people to find their way, for visually impaired people also to find their way thanks to contrast and inclusive design. We also design multisensory trails, so you have stations, exhibits that are to touch, to hear, and to smell. So we combine senses together to make the content as accessible as possible and for everyone. And when I say everyone, it's not only for people with disability, but really for every public in museums. And for us, it's really important to not talk about persons with disability, but just about the publics, because what we want is to make the content accessible for everyone, no matter the specific needs or the special needs the persons have. We also do architectural models to make architecture of buildings understandable and accessible for everyone. Apps and audio tours with accessible contents, such as sign language, audio descriptions, also audio parcours, audio paths for kids, for families, or for people with more expertise in the field. And hybrid interactives mixed with, so the mix of tactile stations with digital content. And now we also do exhibition design with accessible design for full spaces. So you see things well, you understand the content, and so we generalize the accessible design to entire spaces. It's important for us to tell you how we process and what are the different steps in our work. So first of all, we meet the museums and try to understand the needs. What should be understood there? Who are the target groups in museums? Which target groups the museums want to bring? And what are the main content to give access to? And in a second step, we work with users, because we cannot do things for users without the users. So we do prototyping phases where we test our exhibits and we make them validate, or we make them better thanks to the feedbacks of end users. We have in our team designers that know how to design ergonomic, accessible, and aesthetic exhibits. So they do sketches and layouts. And then in our workshop, we mix digital technologies such as 3D printings or milling with craftsmanship. So we have model makers that know how to do robust objects that are usable in the long term. We install and maintain the exhibits. And at the end of the project, we also do an evaluation and audience observation of the project and how the users are using the exhibits and if it helps or if there are things to improve. This is also a very important phase in our process. I would like to highlight the positive impacts of this inclusive design exhibits. First of all, they are pleasant, so you are somehow attracted by the inclusive stations, and they are also nice to see. And so I think it actually makes the interest for the content of the museums just higher. Secondly, they are relevant, which means you can learn, and they very often reveal what you cannot see at first sight, or what you don't understand with text written and more complex information. And the last point that is also very important is the shareable aspect, because museums are places to share, to learn, and we notice in our projects that people just gather and have fun together, or they learn together. And I think this is actually the big thing with inclusive design. It's to gather everyone around the topics and not to make content accessible for some groups and some other for other groups. So the shareable aspect is very important. And now, since we have worked now since 2009 in the field of inclusive design for museums, I would like to show you what are the next steps or the things we see for the future. We notice museums are getting more and more accessible. Of course, it's about giving the information. As you all said, it's a challenge. We have to make museums known and museums offers known for everyone. And right now in our projects, we design more and more exhibition spaces. So not only sensory routes in the museums, but the spaces entirely. And we also develop more and more hybrid exhibits, because with the growing tools, the growing digital tools, we notice we also need to provide solutions that use the digital world, but that they don't get rid of the haptic and sensory experiences. So now we design solutions that are mixing both together. So it means you make an action, such as you take something in the hand and then you see something happening on a screen. So this is what we call hybrid exhibits, because they mix both solutions. And as you can see, we target all groups. So we have kids enjoying the experiences, families, and room classes. So it's very wide, and that's why we don't speak about accessible design, but inclusive design. And to finish, I would like to thank you for listening. And you can follow us on our website or networks to see more and more projects. I didn't specify with which museums we work, because we actually work with many museums. So also to give you some positive energy, there are many museums very active and involved in the process of inclusion. So we see inclusion is a mindset. It's not only a field of expertise, it's also a mindset, and we think everyone now is aware. We just have to be active and getting more and more people involved in the field. Thank you.
Rose, last presentation.
Okay, thank you. I think it's very, very apt that we are the last to introduce the museum. We're the Tower of David Museum, and we're actually very, very interested in everything that we've heard just now. We are the Tower of David Jerusalem Museum. As you can see, it's an ancient fortress, ancient in the sense that parts of it are 2,000 years old. Most of it is more than 1,000 years old. And the museum is situated within this fortress. It was built to be inaccessible. It's a fortress. It's meant to keep people out. So our challenge was to find a way to bring people in. And we had to find, about 7 years ago, really, we started to say, how do we become genuinely inclusive? How do you do that? Oh. And we found there's 3 steps to becoming accessible and inclusive. And one, and this is the phrase that I've learned here at this conference, nothing about us without us. This was the very first step. We wanted to be inclusive, but we didn't know what everyone wanted. We barely know what typical visitors require. So we consulted with the people directly involved. We decided to start small. We began with family programming. And we spoke to families with children with different kinds of disabilities. And we asked them, what are your needs and what are your fears? And they gave us ideas about timing, about having activities for families together with all their children, those with disabilities, those without disabilities. They talked to us about closed sessions and quiet rooms, and we learned. But we're not experts in disability. We're experts in museums. So the second step was to talk to the real experts, and we set up an advisory committee. And actually, Access Israel, which has been very active here at the conference, has been one of our chief advisors. As soon as we began speaking to people who understood how to introduce people with disability to the museum world, we were directed to the right professional organizations who then began training our staff. And what's also very, very important is that the team, the entire museum team, has to be trained. It's not just the guides, not just the educators. The entire museum is part of the idea that our vision is to tell the story of Jerusalem to everyone, no matter their religion, no matter their culture. It also means no matter where they come from and no matter if they have disabilities. The result was amazingly successful programming. And part of the reason was because this is really to maybe answer Martin. We saw the families as our partners. We have a marketing department, but the social media of families with children with disabilities is unbelievable. So they were actually our marketers, and we would have hundreds and hundreds of families coming from all over the country, traveling for 2 and 3 hours on public transportation. We would have our activities, and we said, wait a minute, if it's so popular at the Tower of David, shouldn't these be happening in museums all through the city? So we started a professional forum. We had 17 museums and heritage sites in Jerusalem who got together for meetings and sharing of best practices, and to cooperate and coordinate activities. And I'm not saying that it's a paradise of disability-free programming, but we're making a tremendous impact, and I'm proud to say that the Israel Council of Museums then adopted us, and now we have a national forum for the entire country, and we have periodic meetings about sharing best practices and learning what's needed in the fields. And of course, our Director of Inclusion, Reut, is the national director of this forum. Today at the Tower of David, I can say we have a full menu of accessible and inclusive events. Anywhere, everything from relaxed performances of our night show, going down to early bird hours, using VR, using sign language, and we've just renewed the entire museum, and of course we're including this in exhibition design. But I think the thing that is perhaps the most impressive is the fact that because we were able to show the planning authorities, and I think everyone who is involved in historic buildings knows that planning authorities don't want any changes. They don't want elevators, they don't want ramps. This is the way it's been for 100 years, we're not changing it. As soon as we convince the antiquities authorities, the planning authorities, that if we opened up the museum to everyone, it preserves the museum. More people come, more money. And we managed to erect 2 elevators, 2 lifts, and ramps in an ancient site. And I just want to show you, to end with this, this is Geffen. She is 5 years old. She came with her family. Could you do the film? It's a very short film, without the sound if it's possible. But she came with her family to an activity. And now, for the first time, is there a way to do it? For the first time in history, a child like Geffen can go upstairs to the galleries in a elevator and walk down a walk that a walker can come down that's wide enough and that's clear enough so that she can come and climb the castle walls just like her sister. There they are. And there you see. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who presented her innovation here at the panel. When we made our preparation meetings, we were thinking about what do we have in common, because there are as you can see, as you heard, there are very different approaches to make the arts and culture accessible. But I think what unites us all is the awareness how important it is and what big impact it has if you open up the world of art and culture to everyone. And there are many different possibilities. And I'm always, whenever I listen to someone, some of these best practice examples, I'm always impressed of what is possible. All these little steps that kind of put together a big puzzle. Also, this guide that Martin Essl made possible and introduced to you, which is part of my work. We portrayed 130 museums all over in Austria, what they offer in regard of accessibility and inclusion programs. And the experience was some can offer a lot because they have the resources, others offer a little, but the important thing is that everyone does something. Every little step is really, really important to make the arts and the culture accessible to everyone. And it's such a fundamental experience that we all need. And as you maybe could see and hear, it's also very emotional. It really touches every one of us. The arts and the culture is really, really important to be open to everyone. Thank you for everyone who does a great step towards it. I think time-wise we are at the end. Is this correct, or can we open to the public, to the audience? Okay. Any questions of you? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much for the great presentations. I would like to ask colleagues from Singapore and Germany about, first of all, if they have any kind of international partnership with other museums, in particular in developing countries, so they can provide their technical support as needed or as requested. And the second issue is, what is the, I would say, effort, the estimated, time and cost and effort to create or to make copies for some statues and things in the museum so that the blind people can interact with and touch it? Is it costly in order to make it, or it's something reasonable and realistic?
Hi, thank you for the question. So I will just, in the Singapore context, we are just working in Singapore right now, but the way we do it, I think there is a possibility for other organizations to do and replicate the same thing, but at the same time, it does depend on the availability of access consultants. So we partner with an access consultancy that is run by 2 persons with disabilities who are accredited to do accessibility audits. And then what we do is we have our persons with disabilities in our team to take that information and make it presentable and easy to read for the public. So that part is definitely transferable, but it's the availability of access consultants that's the thing that may be harder to translate across unless there's somebody already in the country doing it. Yeah, that's our part, and I'll leave the question about tactile exhibits to my colleague here.
Thank you. Yeah, to reply to your questions, time and cost are important factors, of course. The time to produce or to design and produce tactile objects is very different according to how many actors are involved in the project and how much time we have. Very often we work for openings of museums, and we actually tend to arrive too late in the process, so we have to go very fast, but it's important for us to be here as soon as possible to understand all the factors and important challenges of the project. And unfortunately, I don't have a very clear answer about the cost because it's also different from project to project. We work for temporary exhibitions where the costs are not high. We work for big openings where the costs are higher, and sometimes we do in the entire exhibition, sometimes just a path with tactile objects. And it also depends on the objects we do. So it's actually unique projects, unique objects each time. So that's why we call it design. We don't do production in series. And I think it's important in museums to consider everything around the objects and not only make things in 3D without thinking of the context and what we say about the object or the content. So if you have specific requirements or projects, you can come to me after the session and we can talk about the realization cost. Thank you.
Any other question here in the back, please?
Yeah, a very short remark, and it is, I am Antonio Martinez from the University of Alicante. I'm the director of a program for persons, of a training program for persons with intellectual disabilities at the university. And I would like to stress the importance of easy language in the museums. It is very common that in the museums, for example, at least in Spain, we have very long texts which explain every element of the exhibition. I think it would be very important to have easy and plain text which would make the museum accessible not only for persons with intellectual disabilities, but also to old persons, to persons with problems of comprehension of the language because they are foreigner, etc. So I think this is very important. In Spain, and I finished in 1 minute, we have done an easy guide, an accessible guide of the city of Alicante. We have done the guide, but the problem is that the museums itself do not collaborate and are not accessible and do not have, the videos do not have captioning, neither language sign interpretation, etc. But I wanted to stress above all the question of easy language.
I would just like to say you are 100% right. Just now in my museum, we're renovating the entire museum, and the plan is the audio guide, the regular audio guide, as soon as it's finished, we then take people who are skilled in writing easy language, and there will be dedicated audio channel for easy language, because you are 100% right. That's, it fills a number of roles. Yeah.
I've seen there's another question, but I would also like to add to your comment. So for example, in our survey of the Austrian museums, what they offer, so we have here a list of all the, goes several pages, of all the 130 museums, and a list of what they offer in regard to hearing impairments, visual and so on, but also easy language. And there are a lot of, yes, we offer information material in easy language, I'm a consultant to museum myself, and I know that in former days, art historians, it was important for them and for their expertise to make texts as complicated as possible. There is a big change in attitude nowadays. Almost every museum offers information in easy language because people became aware in museums, people became aware that if they don't do it, there are no visitors coming anymore.
That's right.
There was a question here, but thank you for your comment. Thank you.
But I'm sorry, can you repeat because there is no microphone, we cannot hear you.
The question is, I'm curious for the future for artists who would like to create work that they're just bringing to the museum or the gallery and they're willing to say, I don't mind who touches it or what happens to it. What's the future for museums and galleries' willingness to say, we'll work with that artist and whatever the insurance or liability might be for that?
So I'm not sure I can reply directly to your question because we actually discover art that is already in the museum, existed, and that no one can touch. But I think that's the topic. If artists make tactile exhibits or exhibits that can be touched directly, then there is even higher value of it if you can discover it with your senses. We do something that translates the art that you cannot touch. So we never face the situation where we work with artists that do tactile artworks, but it's very interesting, and I think we could learn a lot from it, and artists could also learn a lot from our experience. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have been informed that our time is over. I'm sure there are many more questions that you maybe have. Please come up to everyone here on the panel individually, and we're happy to continue our talk with you. Please also come up to me if you're interested in the museum guide, and not only to have a copy of it, but maybe also to hear more of it. And regarding the last questions, I would say this is a very, very important aspect, make not only the institutions inclusive, but also the artwork itself. And that's really difficult and a complete new approach. And I would say Martin ESSL is one of the innovators in this field. Thank you very much.